As people line up to say their final goodbyes to Queen Elizabeth II, there are some who are raising criticism about the monarchy and its colonial past. Yesterday, anti-monarchists protested outside the British Parliament, holding up signs saying, quote, "Not my king, abolish the monarchy," and others with blank pieces of paper symbolizing their freedom of expression. So here to discuss is Stephen Erlanger. He's the chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe for the New York Times. Thanks for joining us. When it comes to the relationship between the monarchy and former colonies, former members of the British Empire, the relationship's complicated. When the Queen first became queen, there were countries that were still colonies. Jamaica was a colony when she became queen. And so she oversaw, a number of countries changing their relationship with the United Kingdom. And most recently, we had Barbados that severed constitutional ties with the monarchy, but remains in the Commonwealth. What are some of the critics saying about the late Queen?
Well, there's a lot of affection for her. Mm-hmm. The criticism tends to be because she embodied the state. She's kind of responsible for what the state did, even though her governments acted on their own, given constitutional monarchy. Mm-hmm. But she took the crown in 1952, right after the war, and decolonization was really very new and underway. Mm-hmm. And she oversaw the kind of gentling of the Commonwealth. But the process of decolonization continues, and to some degree, some of the criticism you get is, it's been 70 years, isn't it time we had our heads of state coming from our own countries and not from this distant empire which has shrunk so far? We have cultural ties, that's the Commonwealth. But do we really, and this is what many in Australia would ask, it's what the people in Barbados said, isn't it time we really ran ourselves? Mm-hmm. And I think this will get more acute under King Charles because he's new to this, he has relations with the Commonwealth, but he doesn't have the affection mm-hmm. that his mother built up over such a long period.
I will say, though, I have heard people specifically criticize Queen Elizabeth II for not apologizing. Is that a fair criticism?
Well, I think it is a criticism, and it is a fair criticism in the sense that if people felt it was her duty to apologize, she certainly didn't do it. I don't expect Charles to apologize either. I mean, they themselves are inheritors of an empire that, frankly, disappeared quite a long time ago. I mean, she actually, I think, developed a fair amount of warmth inside the Commonwealth because in her quiet way, she opposed white rule in Rhodesia. She was in favor of sanctioning apartheid South Africa against her own prime minister. And though she was fairly quiet in public, everybody knew how she felt. So there was a sense that she really had an affection for the Commonwealth and for racial justice. And of course, this is becoming, more interesting these days because the whole world is rightly much more concerned now with the history of victims, the history of those who were downtrodden, the idea of Black Lives Matter, of gender identity. This is all moving to increase this kind of criticism that isn't it time for the monarchy to recognize that it did slavery, it had sins against the people it ruled, and shouldn't the monarchy recognize that part of its history also? I think that's the essence of this complaint.
Yeah, and we will say that Prince William, the Prince of Wales now, has expressed sorrow over the atrocities that slavery brought to the Caribbean, and I think that you are seeing sort of an evolution within the monarchy when it comes to acknowledging the scars that colonialism has left behind. Well, let me ask you this though. One of the things that the Queen Elizabeth II was very instrumental in doing is growing the Commonwealth as an organization. And as I pointed out, Barbados, even though they wanted to cut constitutional ties, they remain in the Commonwealth. What is the challenge now for King Charles III in terms of ensuring the longevity of the Commonwealth, the nation of Commonwealth, or the Commonwealth nations, and ensuring that it remains a valuable organization to be a member of?
Yes, I think that's quite a good question. And one should separate the question of who's going to be our heads of state with the question of staying inside the Commonwealth. Because in a way, the Commonwealth is this extraordinary cultural institution. It is a shared history. A lot of the members of the Commonwealth benefited from the best parts of British rule, which was perhaps rule of law, a form of democracy, and there is affection for the empire, but that doesn't necessarily translate into not wanting to finish the process of self-rule. And so this is a very important distinction. For Charles, who is, after all, quite old, let's be fair, most people are retired at his age. He does have relations with the Commonwealth. Part of the time he spent as Prince of Wales was traveling through the Commonwealth. So he knows quite a lot of these people, but the history isn't there in quite the same way. I think people will give him time. I think no one wants to break it up. I think people find value in it. You just saw it even in these great Commonwealth Games, which is this huge sports event, almost like the Olympics, where, athletes enjoyed it, people enjoyed it. There's a sense of cultural, historical bonds that are still there and still are cherished, I think, by the majority of people who live in these countries that used to be under British rule and are tied together still by the Commonwealth.
Well, as somebody from one of those countries, Canada, I can tell you that the Commonwealth Games were watched as closely as the Olympics whenever they were on. And so, I understand that sentiment. Stephen Erlanger, thank you very much.
Thank you.